Every year I say I'm going to make a game of the year list, end of year list, whatever that may look like, and every year I fail to do so. So instead this year what I've decided to do is, inspired by John Linneman from Digital Foundry, is to present to you not my best games of 2025 list, but instead the games that I feel best represent my own tastes and games that I feel like aren't getting talked about enough. So this is more of a like underneath the hood of 2025. We're not going to talk about your Expedition 33's and Hades 2 and Ghost of Yote and Death Stranding 2. We're not going to talk about games like that. Instead, we're going to talk about games that I think are a bit more personal to me and my experience throughout the year. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First game I want to talk about, Power Wash Simulator 2. Now, Power Wash Simulator is pretty popular. It's not exactly a game that went under the covers, so to speak. But what I really appreciate about Power Wash Simulator 2 is I have tried to get into these simulation cleaning games for a little while now, and really only one has like clicked for me, and that's the Crime Scene Cleaner. I actually found that Crime Scene Cleaner's inclusion of like a focused narrative moving forward made the game a bit more interesting, and the fact that you would have to kind of progress areas, unlock rooms, things of that nature to clean things made it feel like it was a bit more driving forward. But Power Wash 1, Spray Paint Simulator, other games of the genre that I've tried haven't really worked for me at the same level. Power Wash Simulator 2 does one thing, and that one thing inherently makes it the best of these cleaning simulation games, and that is local split screen co-op. I mean, it is a must-have for this type of game. I was able to play the entirety of Power Wash Simulator 2 with my wife in split screen, and that was an incredibly valuable experience for me, and it's not something that I get to share with her playing games all that often nowadays. So when a game offers that to me, it is meaningful, you know? Haze Light with Split Fiction and It Takes Two, like they're trying to keep co-op games alive. Some of Microsoft's ventures, you know, like talking about Halo split screen, maybe not doing Halo split screen is a bit of a problem, but split screen games are a novelty really in this day and age rather than a necessity, and that's unfortunate. And Power Wash Simulator 2, adding that as a feature, making it a centerpiece of their sequel game, made it a far more memorable and enjoyable experience than the games in the past, and I'm excited to see what Power Wash Simulator 2 looks like, you know, a year or two down the road with the inclusion of more DLC and additional content. The next game I really want to talk about is South of Midnight. Now, South of Midnight kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people. I don't think Xbox does a great job of demonstrating their games, advertising their games, and this is one of those games that kind of fell by the wayside because it released so close to Oblivion Remastered and Expedition 33. I think a lot of people were so busy with those games they weren't able to give South of Midnight a chance, but I promise you it's worth giving a chance. There is one glaring flaw with South of Midnight, and it is that the gameplay is very by the numbers, you know, kind of movie tie-in Wii era gameplay. Like it does not do nearly enough to excite those that are looking for a gameplay driven experience, and that is a fault of the game, and it's the one thing that holds it back. But visually, I think it's the prettiest game I've ever played, to be honest with you, and that comes from the environment details, the use of color, the designs of the characters and the things that you're fighting or saving, and the story itself and the presentation. I just think that South of Midnight really nails everything across the board, sans the gameplay. The story itself is well written, it's motivating, it feels like a classic, you know, Pixar movie that you would have watched as a kid and loved and thought about, you know, growing up in the same sense as something like maybe like Princess and the Frog. It's very inspired by the, you know, Southern folklore. It tries to implement that into every nitty-gritty little detail, from the designs of buildings and houses and areas. And it also has some commentary, you know, about wealth disparity and, you know, racism in the South and things of that nature. It's a very inspired game, and I wish that inspiration made its way to the gameplay itself. But especially if you're someone that's not, gameplay is the first and foremost thing, even if you are really, and you still love just good stories with well-performed characters and great environments, or if you just want to see a visual showcase, checking out South of Midnight, playing it for a couple hours and looking at these first few areas, I really think the presentation is just impeccable. It is a eternal sin that this was not nominated for Best Art Direction. My next game I want to talk about was Rogue Prince of Persia. Now, Rogue Prince of Persia is a game from the sister studio of the Dead Cells creators. So they did a lot of the work on the DLC for Dead Cells. I have not actually personally played Dead Cells, but now after playing this, I feel like I really need to. Rogue Prince of Persia, it's the closest, Zen platformer that I've played since, Super Meat Boy, maybe. There's this, Zen mode aspect of some gameplay-driven games, like Doom is, the biggest one that comes to mind. When the music is driving, when the enemies are coming from all directions, when you have all these tools in your tool belt, and you're just doing everything as fast as you can, almost without even thinking, like Ultra Instinct Goku. That is what the Zen mode feels like in a game, and Rogue Prince of Persia had me in Zen mode almost the entire playthrough. It was just awesome to experience. The music is driving and super unique. I've never heard a soundtrack that sounds quite like this game. The presentation is simplistic, but one thing I really appreciate about Rogue Prince of Persia is that it's a platformer that has a unique art style that makes it stand out from the rest, but it doesn't utilize that unique art style in a way that is distracting. One of my issues with games like Hollow Knight, for example, or Ori, is that the artistic direction of the games is gorgeous, but the way the art direction is used can be really distracting, and it makes it really difficult sometimes to see what is foreground, what is background, what is I can't just look at a platform and know it's spiky sometimes I have to squint and look and be like, are those spikes, are those black edges blending into the background, what am I seeing here? I never had that experience with Rogue Prince of Persia, and that makes it stand out from other platformers that I love. I'm a big fan of Ori. I enjoyed Hollow Knight and Silksong, but Rogue Prince of Persia, from the platforming aspect of it, was just so seamless, and its ability to mesh its art direction and its movement and its music is what allows that Zen mode feeling to just completely overtake you. The story itself is not anything crazy. The performances aren't gonna blow your mind or anything. It has a nice, stable story that keeps going and is interesting all the way through to the end. It's just missing a little bit at the very, very end. You have to play through the game because it's a roguelite. You have to play through it multiple times to actually get to the ending. And I was really hoping that the ending would have a unique boss fight or something along those lines. It didn't actually, and I ended up just fighting the same boss I'd already killed 4 or 5 times. That was a bit of a disappointing way to wrap up the story. But all in all, I have very, very little complaints about Rogue Prince of Persia. I think it's a really fantastic platformer and completely flew under the radar. I just don't see anybody talk about this game the way I feel like people should. Next up, I want to talk about Avowed. Avowed got kind of the... And I don't know why Obsidian in particular attracts this conversation, but just this total negative pushback on release even before anyone really plays it. And it happens with all of their games, it feels like, where it's just people kind of have this opinion going in and then just look to confirm it, and then they push back against Obsidian games in general. Avowed, for me, as someone who does not love the Bethesda format, I'm not a big Skyrim guy. I loved Fallout 3 as a kid. Every time I go back to Fallout 3, it feels like it's missing something nowadays. I completely bounced off Fallout 4. I actually thought that Starfield was the best Bethesda game I'd played, and and by best I mean I'm giving it an 8, But I've just never really been into their games. Avowed feels like the better combination to me of world exploration, interesting side content, and gameplay forward thinking. Like I loved being a caster in Avowed in a way that I don't think I've ever enjoyed being a caster in a first person game before. Like living that wizard power fantasy was so much fun in that game. The way I would cast multiple different spells to like create this kind of just battlefield of flying fireballs and lightning bolts and like all this insanity. And if this were maybe a third person or an isometric game like a Diablo, maybe it would look kind of tame in comparison. But because it's first person, because you're right there in the center of combat, it feels grandiose. And it's really impressively done. I also just think the map design is awesome. Like everything felt so driven. Everything was designed in a way that kept me moving forward, looking through new areas, looking for more collectibles through chests and side quests and whatever else. And my favorite thing about Avowed, even aside from the gameplay itself, was that there is an element of rewarding personal intrigue, and that's something that I think is so important for an RPG. I think the more by the numbers your RPG is, where it's just you get a quest, you do the quest, you turn in the quest, I think that really takes away from the fantasy element of the game, and it's much harder to be immersed. But what Avowed does that I really loved, and what really made me like fall into the game, is there are a lot of significant content aspects of the story of side quests that are not part of quests. It's not like I go and talk to a guy and then he's like, here's this quest, and it places an icon on my map. No, it's like I overheard something in a conversation. I thought, well, I'm going to go explore that. And then I did without any quest popping up, and I was rewarded with like a rare event happening or something along those lines. One of my favorites is in the second area. There is a side quest talking about this guy who's kind of like leaving the local soldiers. And when you defeat him, you can interrogate him for information. And he gives you the information, but the quest ends. Like you don't have to follow up on the information at all. And you have kind of two routes you can go about this, where you can use that information and take it to the mayor and say, hey, this guy told me this thing. And he would be like, oh, well, we'll prepare for that. And that's not part of a quest line. That is just you as a player being like, oh man, I wonder if I should tell someone about this. But what I actually chose to do was go to the camp that he had warned us about, and I cleared it out and defeated everyone there. And then later on in the story, as we wrapped up that chapter, the attack that was on the castle at the end of the chapter was smaller because I had already defeated all of the people that were at that camp, and it had story implications. Like more people survived, and the town stayed alive, and people were able to live in it. All of those implications were outside of the story and outside of side content. That was me exploring and following up on my own leads, and that's incredibly rewarding as a player. I don't think Avowed keeps that up all the way through the end. I think that would have been a better game if they had. I also think that it's, a little lacking in the enemy variety department. I think there could have been more variety to combat that would have helped drive everything forward a bit more. But, despite those two things, I still think it's a really tremendously fun RPG, and clicked for me in a way that, it's more contemporary Bethesda RPGs have not in many, many years. The Altars is a strategy-based game about a guy who's stranded on a planet in a ship, and you gotta get resources so that you can move on a time crunch, or the sun will delete everything. And the wrinkle to this simulation is that your crew are clones of you. You actually clone yourself to create more people so that you can operate this ship and collect these resources and, try to get off the planet. And the Altars is both really interesting in the gameplay juggle aspects, trying to communicate and follow up on the story of the characters interacting with themselves, alongside also making sure you're getting your resources collected so that you don't die at the end of the sequence, whatever your time limit is for that area. The story is very compelling, mostly due to the weight and the grayness of a lot of the problems that arise. You know, these are not easy decisions and easy questions to answer. You know, there were several times in the story when I was playing where I would be tasked with a decision. You know, you have to either pick option A or option B. And I would have to pause the game and step away and really think about it. Like, really think about what the implications are for these things. And even, you know, my brother-in-law, my roommate, like I would talk to him about it and like try to explain the details of what's going on in these situations and be like, what the hell do I do? What do you think I should do? What would you do? You know? And it was very fun and rewarding to be asked such difficult questions in a game like this and actually have to think about them and their repercussions. There is not like a clear, like, well, duh answer to like anything here. And that makes the altars stand out in a way that like not many games have. And it was really awesome experience. I recommend it to basically anyone that has that like sci-fi fan in them. Yes, it's simulation based and strategy based, so it's like the gameplay itself can only be so engaging, but I really never found myself straying away. Like, I didn't stop a session because I was bored. You know, I really did want to see what the next interaction would be or make sure that I had everything that I needed. You know, I stopped playing because I was tired and I was playing for 7 hours straight or something like that. The game's super awesome. I highly, highly recommend it. If you're a sci-fi fan, please check it out. I don't really want to go into more details than what I did here because I think the game itself is extremely rewarding in its story process. Heretic and Hexen is a little remake by Night Dive Studios, I believe, of the original Heretic and Hexen and Hexen 2. I think there's a second Hexen. Transparency, I really only played Heretic all the way through, and then I played like bits of Hexen before some other stuff started to come out and I started to move away from it. But I really was super impressed with Heretic. Like, I did not know that game was that good, you know? I've played like original Doom 1, Doom 2 stuff, but Heretic's design is so interesting. The amount of different weapons that you get access to in the game, alongside the power-up system where you have this like book of power and you can power yourself up for a moment of time. It would have been very easy for the developers to say, all right, you're powered up, you do double damage for the next 30 seconds, go. And that's it. They could have just done that. But instead, they actually made every single weapon that you have, which is a lot of weapons, has a unique, you know, special thing that it does when you're in this powered up state. And it made it very fun to like experiment with all of the weapons and try to find my favorites and try to find the ones with the best situational usages. It was really neat, and it's a feature that I've never seen another game really mess with that I know of. Like, to have this just like short 30-second power-up state that like changes every single gun in your arsenal, and then also still having like a 10-15 weapon arsenal or whatever it is, like it was just super impressive to me. I couldn't believe it. The music was really damn good too. The presentation of everything is awesome. It does really just kind of fall apart towards the end of the game. Like, the final act has this like kind of confusing level design where, because you're looking at, you know, 2D pixel art, you don't realize like, oh, I can stand on this and I could like jump off of it and stuff like that. There are a couple areas that like require you to jump off of things or walk along things that are 2D, and that's just confusing for my brain. And then there is the occasional kind of cheap monster design where you walk through a door and they spawn 30 monsters directly behind you, and if you just don't turn fast enough, you're guaranteed to die. Stuff like that can be really, really frustrating as well in Heretic. Hexen is a lot more melee based. It's very in your face, and it does make the aspect of trying to like keep your health up, keep your armor up, very difficult. Like, it is actually very tough in that game to like keep your health up, even on like normal difficulties, until you start to get more ranged options. But I always heard people talk about Hexen. I wanted to talk about Heretic. I thought Heretic was awesome. So that's it for that. Yes, Lies of P Overture is a DLC. I do not care. It is one of the best games I played this year, and that is because I really loved the original Lies of P, and Lies of P Overture was essentially a 1.5 year long wait to celebrate. When Lies of P came out, there was no guarantee that the game would be popular or well-received or anything like that. Turns out, yeah, it was pretty well received. I think most people kind of agree it's the best non-FromSoft Souls-like. Just overall, you know, there are games like Kazan and stuff like that maybe have better gameplay at its core, but from an overall experience, from the story to presentation to music to the polish to the art design, all those aspects, the bosses, like I think it's the most complete non-FromSoft experience in the Souls-like genre. And I personally would go even a step further, especially now that this DLC is out, to say that it ranks pretty highly in the total Souls genre, even including FromSoft games, you know? If you're asking me to pick Lies of P or Dark Souls 3, I'm picking Lies of P. I think Dark Souls 3 has great bosses, but that's about all it's got for me. I don't like the build variety nearly as much. I don't like the environments, the linearity of it, even though Lies of P is also a very linear game. I just think that a lot of the areas are not very interesting in Dark Souls 3. And then also Dark Souls 3 has that kind of painful, like, oh, remember this? Like, jingle, jingle keys in your face. Like, oh, remember Anne Orlando? Jingle, jingle, jingle. Remember Gwendolyn? Jingle, jingle, jingle. That it does, that kind of undercuts the original ideas in the game to me a little bit. I feel like it leverages too much of Dark Souls 1, in my opinion. And maybe I'm alone in that opinion. That's okay. Anyways, Lies of P Overture. It is a DLC for the original Lies of P. The original Lies of P asks a lot of questions about the world and the lore that it does not answer, particularly about the legendary stalker who trained your character to fight, and that's why they fight with a unique style, and many characters in the game point out that you fight with a unique style compared to the other hunters around in the game. So Overture was this 1.5 year long wait to answer all of these questions, and also it was a moment for the developers to celebrate what they had accomplished, that they had made this game that stood out above all the other competition in the genre. And at the end of my playthrough with Lies of P, there's this, when the credits roll, the credits have like concept art, and there's this like, thank you for playing, you know, the kind of that cliche stuff, but it kind of set in as the credits were rolling for me, and I was crying because the ending is already heart-wrenching. But the moment that like they're showing that concept art and they're showing kind of the fan responses to things, and there's this feeling of like, wow, we actually did it. And I can't even imagine how good that felt, you know? That like, wow, we did something that like people have been trying to crack into this genre and make good games for a long time, and basically no one had. I really don't think that there was a good Souls-like before Lies of P. So to celebrate in that sense was kind of beautiful, you know? I mean, they put together just this awesome, there's so many good story moments in this DLC. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling at this point. I just, like, Lies of P means a lot to me at this point, where I'm at now, where like the base game was just kind of like getting to play Dark Souls 1 again for the first time in a lot of ways for me. You know, obviously Dark Souls 1 has its like just incredible level design, especially in the first half, that Lies of P doesn't really challenge. But that experience of like being dropped into a world that I had no real understanding of, and diving into the lore and trying to better understand it through the item descriptions, through notes, through character interactions. Like, I invested a lot of time into trying to understand the world of Lies of P, and then they dropped this DLC that basically confirmed a lot of the theories, and it felt really rewarding to see where you were right and where you were wrong. and see these characters that had been teased or referenced in the base game, a year and a half later. It kind of felt almost like a sequel in that concept. And it brought a lot of new stuff to the table with the way it handles these like support fights with the NPC summons, even having like team up attacks and things of that nature that the genre had never really seen before, as far as I know. There was just a lot the Lies of P offered, and it all starts with just like an awesome cast of characters that are super memorable and just a super polished game from a smaller team that had never made a game at that scale before. So Lies of P is kind of your proof that you can do anything you set your mind to if you do it with, self-awareness and respect for your inspirations. So next up, I want to talk about Keeper. I love Double Fine. Double Fine is awesome. I want them to make more weird and cool games, and Keeper is their latest weird and cool game. You play as a lighthouse. It's a bit of a puzzle platformer. Maybe not platform, maybe just puzzle game would be the way to say it. The lighthouse itself is just super cute. The aesthetic style of the game is one of one. There are so many like insanely colorful areas where you just kind of have to like stop and take everything in, because it's just like there's never been a game to use these color combinations that are so just whimsical and dreamlike. It's so impressive. The game does have this story without any dialogue, where you're playing as a lighthouse. You have a bird friend that you're trying to protect. The bird and the lighthouse bond as the story goes on. And it takes you to tons and tons of just like unique settings that look super cool. The game can look so cheerful and whimsical one second, and then dark and brooding and ominous in the next. And it just blends it all so incredibly well. I hope this game continues to get some sort of reverence for its art direction and for its creativity and the way it handles some of the puzzles. I do think that it leaves me wanting a bit more. It doesn't need, like a first-person shooter segment or anything crazy like that, but it did feel like the puzzles were maybe a little simpler than I would have liked. I wouldn't have minded having to stop and really think about some of them. I think that would have been nice. But, is what it is there. I still think the game is really great, really worth playing, especially if you're an artistic person. You love to draw, love to, see just what creative people come up with. Just watch a playthrough of Keeper, play it yourself, just to check it out, just to see its color combination usages and its really creative designs and areas. I really think it's worth the time. It's not a very long game, so, take advantage of it. My penultimate game I want to talk about today, Ball Pit. Ball Pit's probably one of the more like revered games I'm talking about, as far as both like people saying how good it is, but also like it's sold very well from what I've seen. But I just still want to talk about it some more because Ball Pit's awesome, man. Like, this game is so cool. I loved the power creep of the game. And what I mean by that is, like, at the beginning of the game, it can feel a little daunting almost, like, how am I going to beat these bosses and get past these areas? I'm so limited in the options that I have. And then very quickly, you just start to mount up more and more options. You start to understand which balls actually fuse together to create new ones, which ones you like the most, which ones mesh best with other ones. You start to add more options to your build. You unlock new characters. You start to fuse characters together. That's crazy. Then you get to start runs with your balls already upgraded so you can immediately fuse them. And then you can stack all this together. And by the way, did I mention the soundtrack's fucking fire, bro? So it just continues to build and build and build and build. And by the end of the game, it's like you can't even see. Like, there's so much, like, the end game of Ball Pit is utter insanity. It's just, like, I have no idea what's actually happening. I played the game at the fastest speed pretty much the whole time, too. I felt like I almost needed to slow it down by the end. Just so much fun. If you grew up with Alley Ball, if you grew up, or Alleyway, if you grew up, with games like that, Breakout, this game's super fun to play in that sense, but also if you're someone who likes to make, these broken like RPG builds, and you play games like Souls or Borderlands or something like that, where you're just like being creative with your skill trees and stuff like that. There's room for those types of players as well, alongside the actual natural just one more game roguelite, feel that is just so, it's just digs its claws into your brain and makes you never want to stop playing. These are aspects that like Ball Pit just navigates so well. There's also the fun little like reorganization farm element of like building your base the way you want it and reorganizing and put things where you want. I've never been super good at that type of stuff or super invested in that type of stuff, but I still found it pretty fun to come up with unique ways to like kind of everything that I don't need to bounce off of, trying to like make it look nice and be, towards the back, while everything I want to bounce off of and collect is all towards the front, so I can collect more things, like balancing that aspect of it I thought was really, really fun. But Ball Pit, go play it, go listen to the soundtrack, it's a banger, and enjoy, because it's an awesome game. I really enjoyed it. The final game I want to talk about today is Silent Hill F. I don't even know where to start with Silent Hill F. Let me start, I guess, with my experience, because the first playthrough of Silent Hill F, I didn't like the game that much. I just thought it was like good. I found the combat to be a little frustrating. I found the story to be a little like confusing, and I really just wasn't sure where things were going by the end of it. And then, I get to the after credit scene of your first playthrough, and there starts to be this like, oh, that's what's going on. Okay, now I understand. Let's play through this again with that knowledge, and let's pay attention. And the second playthrough was like night and day. I went from I don't know how to feel to like, whoa, like this note has this implication that this thing is happening, and these characters are doing their thing on the side while these characters are doing their thing on the side, and like who's behind it all, or like how real is this? I kept asking questions and questions and questions, and kept finding notes with answers, but also more questions. And it just kind of kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper, to the point where by the time I'd finished my fourth and my fifth playthrough of the game, like cracking the code and understanding everything and seeing some of the most horrific, like ways the direction of this game could go, it's just like, I can't just, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like Silent Hill F in that sense. I don't think that there's ever been a game written this concisely and well and rewarding for people that put in the effort. I can understand, like, if you only played Silent Hill F once and you didn't think it was worth doing a second or third playthrough of, I can understand being kind of iffy on the game. But I just really, really think that, like, once you get to a point where the combat is just kind of what it is, and you're not really thinking that much about it, because the combat is pretty good. It's not like bad combat. It's just that like the way enemies react to being hit can be somewhat inconsistent, and it's hard to keep track of like how a hit's going to bounce off, and then you feel like you got punished for doing what you felt was right, and it can feel a little cheated, and if you get like ambushed by multiple enemies, or like an enemy grabs you from around a corner, takes half your health, like those experiences can be quite frustrating, right? But once you kind of have an understanding of like, what fights do I actually need to do, how much time and effort do I actually need to put into these certain things, like there's a whole element of this story that is just so insane. Like it is hard not to get sucked into the vortex of this story. And that second playthrough, I'm begging people to play it a second time. Go for one of the other endings, because the game tells you how to get the endings. Go for one of the other endings, because it is so unbelievably rewarding. There is a point towards the end, it's like the final hour and a half, 2 hours of the game, where your ending gets locked in, and everything from that point forward, like dialogue, final boss, like cutscenes, almost every aspect of that is different now. Like you just learn so much from doing these other playthroughs, because that last section of the game is constantly giving you new information to add into your board you have on the wall with all the shoestring, wrapped together. Like it made me feel like the Always Sunny meme, as I'm trying to keep track of like where everything is. And I just think I genuinely think it's the best written game I've ever played. In the same realm as like these really interesting games from back in the day, like BioShock and stuff like that, where it's like these characters are so interesting. Silent Hill has that too, and not to mention like performance-wise, I understand how good the Expedition 33 cast is, but my vote was definitely on the actress playing Hinako, because she throughout the game, she essentially plays two different versions of herself, a version of her that is fighting back against this and a version of her that is giving into it. And the game almost treats them like two separate characters. And that is heavily endorsed by the way she performs them. She performs them like two different characters, and to the point to where they don't really even like get along or see eye to eye. They have two different wants for their futures. And that being so wrapped up in Hinako as a character, being this individual who is so conflicted and can see her life going two different directions because she's at this very insane point in her life where it's either going to go one way or the other, right? Like her being so conflicted about what she wants in that scenario, it is so intriguing the entire time. So I just really think Silent Hill F got a little slept on here towards the end of the year. I just feel like the story is insane. Just so worth experiencing. And don't experience it once. Experience it at least twice. But I really would say going all the way for the true ending, which does require 4 playthroughs, So that's a little bit of much, I guess. But it's worth doing, right? So that's it for my list. This is my collection of amazing 2025 games that I think everyone should give a try. And, if you want to look at my full list, I'll actually have the list of my actual ranked games out in the description. I use GG to keep track of all the games that I play, and I rank them. And sometimes I go back and adjust the ranks if I decide like a game didn't stick with me the way I thought it would. But for the most part, it's finalized. I also do want to give a little special shout out here at the end. I've been playing Total Chaos, Chronos, and Routine here at the end of the year, and I don't know if I'm actually going to finish at least 2 of them, but I think Chronos I will finish at some point soon. But all those 3 games are really cool, and Chronos in particular I think would have placed very highly if I had finished it in time. It might have even made this list of games I wanted to talk about, because I really do think that the combat is really intriguing, and the world is really cool, and the presentation is awesome. I really dig the like synth sci-fi soundtrack. It's really, really cool. It's just mostly the story side of things where I'm just not that interested in what's actually like happening. I just kind of want to go to areas and experience the game, which is a weird feeling, but I think it would have placed very high in my list if I finished it in time, and maybe by the time you see this video I will have finished it and it'll be in my list in the link below. But special shout out to those games. That's it for me. I hope you guys have a happy New Year's, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.